Hello everyone! Today, as promised, we will take a look at how the game works for Age of Empires 2, the expandable card game. Now, as you can see, I have chosen one of the previously opened starter decks, the Goths, and in front of us we have 4 piles to choose from, 4 decks. Now then, there are 3 terms that you need to know when playing this game for the decks in specific. So we have the total deck, which is all 4 piles together. That's your total deck. And your total deck must have a minimum of 90 cards. So the total must be 90 cards. And we will take a look at how that is divided in a table. A special note on villagers must be said. These tokens, they can gather resources, repair damaged buildings, research upgrades, technologies, and age advancement, and they can also create new buildings. So yeah, without any villagers at all, you lose the game. Or you can lose the game if your town center is destroyed. You can also win the game by collecting 5 relics and enshrine them in a monastery for 6 turns. Just like in the actual game, you can win the game by having so many relics in a monastery. But that's something for an advanced rules class. We won't be talking about that today. Just mentioning the objects here of the game. Then you can also win by advancing to the Imperial Age, the final age, build a wonder of the world and protect it for 6 turns. And that's actually quite a thing. That's quite hard to do, just like in the video game. And you will see a lot of aspects of this game reflect on the video game, which is part of the thing that I love. Alright, so your village itself can have 3 rows of buildings. No more than that, but can have as many columns as you like. So yeah, you can actually make quite a big village. Alright, so I've actually mixed up the things from the starter. But I mean, the mill is supposed to go over here, the lumber is supposed to go over there, and the house is supposed to go over here. But that doesn't really matter. Right, let's continue on to what we will have next. Shortly after this. Then you have the age deck, which is each deck specifically for one age. So you have a dark age deck, feudal age deck, castle age deck, and an imperial age deck. And then you have the play deck, and the play deck varies throughout the game. That is actually the game you draw from at that moment. So with these terms out of the way, we can take a look at how the decks are comprised. Now then, like I said, you must have a 90 card minimum, but a deck cannot exceed 100 cards. No, wait, there is just a minimum. There is no maximum whatsoever. How is this divided throughout the decks? If you stick to a minimum, you'll have 30 cards in your Dark Age deck, 30 cards in your Feudal Age deck, 20 cards in your Age 3 Castle Age deck, and finally 10 cards in Age 4, the Imperial deck. Nowhere in the booklet it says that there have to be a specific amount of cards in any deck. So my guess is you can leave out the Imperial Age and just fill it up for the rest of the cards. I don't think that's a problem. It really doesn't say in the booklet. It just shows you an example of a minimum 90 card deck. Right, then there are numbers for playsets. The maximum amount of cards you can have in a playset in this game is 5. Unlike other card games where you have 4 or 3, 5 is the minimum. There are actually 2 exceptions. There is militia cards. Just by name, militia, which can have 10 cards in a playset. I know, right? That's a lot. And the other exception here is walls, which is just denoted by here, walls. And walls can have an unlimited number in your deck. So yeah, you can just play a wall deck and no one gets through. But then again, you don't win. For the purposes of playsets, you'll look at the card title and you'll notice that some cards have different abilities but the same title. These are combined for a playset. So for example, if you want 5 Arbalists in your deck and you have 3 specifically Britain Arbalists, you can only fill it up with 2 regular Arbalists. But yeah, the total of the card title must be 5. Of course, with the exception of militia and walls. Next, you have specific cards for a civilization. Like we are playing here with a Goth deck. Now let me take a look here. Right. This card here says Goth Infantry Unit in its type. That means that only the Goths can play this card. If you are a Briton and playing this card, your deck is invalid. Next up is the civilization card. You'll need one for the civilization you are about to play. So we are playing Goths today, and so we have one of these cards. Now it has some special rules for the Goths in specifics, and on the other side here it has some keywords, a turn sequence, cards not usable by the Goths, very important if you are playing a certain deck. You can just quickly glance, oh, these cards are not for me. And here you have the icons and what they mean for the game. So yeah, let's take a look here at the Goths. When paying for a specific type of infantry, Goths only have to pay for 4 tokens to receive 5 tokens. This only applies when all 5 tokens go on the same unit card. Alright, so you get a little bit of bonus for infantry. Specific type of infantry, it says. Then Goths do not pay resource cost when building an infantry upgrade. The resource cost is still paid. Alright, seems pretty cool. Infantry gets increased X symbol versus building. Now let's see what X symbol means. Oh, it doesn't say here. I think it means power. Attack points, yes. Similar to power. Yeah, so the infantry gets an increased attack power versus building. Civilization specific card needed. That's a little asterisk here. So it says so on the card. Then Goths only need to pay 1 villager on a boar instead of 2 villagers. Okay, cool. And during the Imperial Age, Goths garrison value and villager population limits are increased by 5. Nice. Then we have the creation cost for villagers and monks. And these are tokens. These are actually not represented in the game, which I find kind of a shame, but yeah, who knows. If this game was longer around, they may have made some physical tokens, but they haven't. Villagers cost 1 food to produce, have 4 health points and 3 attack points. Then monks have a cost of 3 food to produce, and they have 3 health points and 0 attack points. And the Goth unique unit is the Huskarl. Right. On the other side here we have a turn sequence, collection, upkeep, then construction, then movement, then attack declaration, then attack resolution, enlistment, discard and draw, and allocation. And we will go through these turns in the series. Not today, but in this entire series. This is just an introduction of sorts. Then we have here the other icons. We have wood, stone, food, gold, villagers, research, health points, attack points. Oh, right, it was here. Oh, silly me. Range, garrison, scenery points, and age minimum. And that's not an age minimum of how old you have to be to play this card. Right. That's the Goth Civilization card. Alright, so this is the a bit of a starting layout for now. And we will go over each card and each type of card as they come up. Now then, you can see I have shuffled up the decks, put them here. They are placed face down with the age card on top of it, appropriate to the age. Once you start playing, you remove the first age card and you can draw from that card until you advance, etc, etc. Here you can see something that's not part of this game. It's a villager token, a human token actually, from Magic the Gathering, but since Age of Empires does not provide tokens, I decided this will be a villager now. Look at him rage. Right, and the villagers are stored in a village pool for now. And you start the game with 3 villager tokens. These dice will represent the tokens, while this card here represents the pool. Right, so as you can see here, you start the game out with your town center, specific to your civilization. Now this is the Raider faction town center, because the Goths are part of the Raider faction and they don't have their own town center. The Persians and I believe the Britons do have their own town center, printed in the text. The rest are just generic town centers. Now what does this do? How does it look like? The layout of the card with the brickwork behind it, with the stoneworks behind it, signifies a building. So this is a building card, of course. It can only be played in age 3, the castle age, but since you start out with this game, that doesn't matter. But if you want to build more of these, you have to wait for age 3. Now then, it is a building, like I said, and it has a cost here. So it costs 9 wood and 8 villagers allocated to this building to build this card, this building. Villagers cost 1 and have 4 health and 3 attack power, just like it says on the civilization card. So that's just a little bit of a reminder for you how much your villagers cost. Then it adds 5 to your villager population limit. So you can have up to 5 villagers at the moment. So we have 3, so we're not yet at our max. That's good. And then below here you see 220. That's the health points of this building. All right, then we have this flag over here with 17. That is scenario point value, and that it has to do with playing scenarios. This little symbol here, the 1 in the gray, in the brownish, is the set numbers with set number 1, and the brownish color over here, a bit of a copperish color, is the rarity. So this is a common. But that's not necessary for play. So you start out with this one and 3 H1 buildings. And the starter decks provide these buildings. I've put them in different sleeves so that I can recognize them. We have a mill, as you can see here, H1 is a requirement, so that's all right. It costs 3 wood and 3 villagers, but it doesn't matter either because we have it as our starting building. A mill has 80 HP and it is needed to build farms and markets. So you can only start building farms and markets once you have a mill. And we have that here. So we laid out over here. Then we have a house. Yeah, that's basic stuff for Age of Empires, right? A house, H1, a cost of 1 wood and 1 villager. It's a building with 80 HP. And it adds 5 to your villager population limit. So we're now at 10. And then finally we have a lumber camp, which is a cost of 3 wood and 3 villagers. It's a building and it also has 80 HP. And the building here says gain 1 wood for each villager you allocate here. Maximum of 5 villagers per turn on this camp. And we place that over here. Allocation of buildings, like a grid, is important and necessary to keep track of. Then we start the game off with 10 wood, 0 stone, 5 gold, and 5 food. Now this is also something that has not been provided by Age of Empires, the card game. You'll just have to write it down. It says so in the rulebook as well. We advise you to write it on paper with a pen. Keep track of your resources, and that's quite necessary, or else you'll get lost and don't know what you have. Right. Let's take a look here. This is called a village, and it's a central focus of the game. The village holds your town center, your resource production facilities, and support buildings. Resource buildings such as farms and lumber camps will be where your villagers are allocated to produce materials. Right, so as like I said, you start off the game with 1 town center, 3 villagers, and 3 buildings from age 1, which you can randomly choose or just choose yourself, or let the starter deck provide. And of course, 10 wood, 0 stone, 5 gold, and 5 food in your resource supply. A special note on villagers must be said. These tokens, they can gather resources, repair damaged buildings, research upgrades, technologies, and age advancement, and they can also create new buildings. So yeah, without any villagers at all, you lose the game. Or you can lose the game if your town center is destroyed. You can also win the game by collecting 5 relics and enshrine them in a monastery for 6 turns. Just like in the actual game, you can win the game by having so many relics in a monastery. But that's something for an advanced rules class. We won't be talking about that today. Just mentioning the objects here of the game. Then you can also win by advancing to the Imperial Age, the final age, build a wonder of the world and protect it for 6 turns. And that's actually quite a thing. That's quite hard to do, just like in the video game. And you will see a lot of aspects of this game reflect on the video game, which is part of the thing that I love. Alright, so your village itself can have 3 rows of buildings. No more than that, but can have as many columns as you like. So yeah, you can actually make quite a big village. So I've actually mixed up the things from the starter, but I mean, the mill is supposed to go over here, the lumber is supposed to go over there, and the house is supposed to go over here. But that doesn't really matter. Alright, so the instruction booklet tells us to set up the game like this. The town center in the middle of your back row. So this at the moment is our middle back row. We don't have any buildings next to these buildings. And then you can place the other 3 buildings face down with at least 1 card of them next to the town center. So you can either rearrange it like so, or so, or maybe so. I don't actually know if you can, well, or so, you know, or just like so, as long as 1 card is next to the town center. Now the booklet is a bit unclear about the next step. The cards in the booklet, as we can see here, are face down, and on the next picture they are face up. And it says here you can see them face up. A typical game setup. This is, by the way, the setup. You can see snuff and discard piles, technology upgrade area, no man's land. These are all terms we are going to get to. Here you can see the civilization cards on the far left, H3 and 4 on the above rows, and H2 below, and play is your H1 deck below that, H4. So yeah, there is a specific setup. Let's just do that, you know, let's just be neat about it, as neat as we can. So I just put it in a totally different order here. Right. So now, with of course room for a discard pile, it must look like this. All right. So for the first thing that we do is place the H card of the play deck, the deck that we start with. We place that over here to show to our opponents and know for ourselves in what age we are. So this is now the play deck, and we draw 7 cards from it to create our starting hand. 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so it doesn't mention anywhere about mulligans, so I assume we don't mulligan. So what do we get here? We get a sheep, quarry, a house, a stand of trees, ×2, another house, and a drought. We will take a look in a moment what that is. And you can see these are all quite simple cards, simple basic cards that you can find in the Age of Empires game quite early on. Now I suggest for playing, I have put every single deck in a different color of sleeve. I would suggest you put them all in the same sleeves, because some cards get into your hands and you know what age that is, and that's not ideal. Then your opponent can see how many cards of that age you still have in your hand, etc., etc. We also need to put 3 villager tokens on our town center. That is actually where you start, what you start with, and then you draw the 7 cards, but I don't think it's a big deal if you switch that thing up. Now then, setup is complete. You just need to determine which player is going to start. And we will assume we have someone against us. We don't actually, but we assume. Right, so let's go over the phases which are to come in short. Just like the booklet says, I will just read out from the booklet. And then this video will be concluded and we will move on to the very first phase of the game. So first up you have the collection upkeep phase. During this phase you collect resources and pay any upkeep that you have on any of your cards. This is one phase. Next phase will be construction. During this phase you may play buildings, relics and wonders. You may also begin research on technologies, upgrades and age advancement. Then you have a movement phase. Only unit cards may move. Movement is either within your own village, to your opponent's village, or to no man's land. Then we have the attack declaration phase. If you have units in place to attack your opponent's buildings or units, you may declare attack on that target. Then we have the attack resolution phase. Calculate the damage for each round of combat and remove casualties. Then we have the enlistment phase, and during this phase you may bring any new units into play or add additional tokens to any existing units. Villagers and monks are constructed in this phase as well. Then we have the discard and draw phase. Discard any unwanted cards from your hand and redraw back to 7 cards. You may put cards in either the discard or snuffed pile when discarding. And finally we have the allocation phase. So remove 1 villager token from any cards being researched. Allocate your villagers to different tasks such as gathering materials or getting ready to produce buildings or technologies. Right, those are the phases. Now I think I haven't mentioned what the snuffed pile and discard pile means. So when you play events, and this is an event card, you can see it by the parchment like background here. That's an event. When you, oh right, and it also says here, when you play an event it goes to your snuff pile. It cannot return. unless maybe a card says so. When you run out of cards from a certain deck, you shuffle the discard pile where the rest of the cards go. So units can be killed, but you can still get them back somehow. Event cards cannot come back, unless cards say so. So like buildings can come back, researches can come back, etc, etc. Right. That's it for part 1 of our video. Next video we will start with collection and upkeep. Thank you all for watching and see you guys then. Bye bye.